Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 28. This venerable one is a little confused. Elder Yuhang broke the rules and was punished. This news seems to have sprouted wings. There was no need to wait until the next morning. Almost all the disciples of the sect had heard about it that very same night. 200 can strikes. If Elder Yuhang were replaced by any other ordinary person, that would be enough for them to be beaten to death. Even a cultivator isn't indestructible. Xuemeng jumped up after learning about it. What? Shizun went to the court of discipline. Young master, go and talk to the sect leader. He's already injured. How could he withstand 200 strikes? Shimei said. Xuemeng was going crazy. My father? I can't. My father is still at the Taxia Palace and hasn't returned yet. A carrier pigeon wouldn't even get there for another day. Why didn't any of you stop Shizun? Mo Ran and Shimei glanced at each other. Stop Chu Wanning? Who in this world could stop him? This cannot be. I'm going to find him right now. Xuemeng roared and ran towards the court of discipline. Before he entered the courtyard, he saw a group of Elder Zhoulu's disciples blocking the entrance of the main hall, whispering about something. What are you standing there for? Move. Get out of my way. Young master. Ah, the young master is here. Make way, the young master is here. The disciples quickly separated and gave way for Xuemeng. The gate of the Qingtian temple was open, and Chu Wanning was kneeling silently, his posture straight, his eyes closed. Elder Zhoulu, with an iron rod in hand, was reciting the laws of Si Shengpeak. Every time he finished reciting one, the iron rod slammed against Chu Wanning's back. The 91st law of this sect: do not indiscriminately hurt the innocent, and do not use cultivation against a normal person. Under this rod, do you have any objections? None. The 92nd law of this sect: do not act arbitrarily, do not act selfishly. Under this rod, do you have any objections? None. Elder Zhoulu didn't dare hold back and had to execute the punishment as he would with any other disciple. After more than 90 strikes came down, Chu Wanning's white robes were stained with blood. Xuemeng respected Chu Wanning the most. When he saw this, his eyes went bloodshot and he shouted, Shizun. Chu Wanning ignored him. His eyes were still closed and he frowned slightly. Elder Zhoulu glanced at the door and muttered, Elder Yuhang, the young master is here. I'm not deaf, I heard him. Blood dripped out of the corners of Chu Wanning's mouth, but he didn't raise his eyes. He's just a noisy child, don't worry about it. Elder Zhoulu sighed. Yuhang, why are you doing this? Who is the one that is always punishing my disciples for being disobedient? Chu Wanning said indifferently. If I'm not punished today in accordance to the law, how will I be able to face my disciples in the future? Carry on. Ha, Elder Zhoulu looked at his pale, slender neck protruding from the edge of the wide collar that hung gently like thin smoke and asked, then can I at least make them lighter? That is nothing more than deception. Chu Wanning said. Don't worry. It's only 200 strikes, I can bear it. Elder Yuhang. Elder Zhoulu, if you don't have anything more to say, carry on. The iron rod finally fell again. Xuemeng's voice was frantic, Elder Zhoulu. Are you not going to fucking stop? Do you know the situation you've put me in? That's my Shizun you're beating. My Shizun. Elder Zhoulu had no choice but to bite his tongue and pretend he didn't hear him. Xuemeng was about to explode. Can't you hear me, old man? I'm ordering you to stop. You, if you dare hit him again, I'll. He thought for a while and couldn't come up with anything to say. After all, he was only a 15-year-old boy. Regardless of the fact that he was the proud son of heaven, his strength and qualifications are far less than those of the elders. He could only blush and throw out an outrageous claim. I'll tell my father. Elder Zhoulu. Chu Wanning let out an almost inaudible sigh. 97 strikes. 98 strikes. 99 strikes. 100 strikes. His clothes were torn and blood was glaringly seeping out. Shwemeng couldn't hold back anymore. His eyes were red with anxiety and he was about to recklessly rush in, but Chu Wanning suddenly opened his eyes. He waved his hand and a barrier instantly came out, blocking the entrance. Shwemeng bounced back a few steps, almost falling to the ground. Chu Wanning coughed up blood. He shifted his glare, narrowing his fierce phoenix eyes. How disgraceful! Leave! Shizun! Chu Wanning sternly said, since when can the young master of Shizun Peak order an elder to bend the law for his own personal gain? Leave now! Shwemeng stared at him. His eyes widened and it looked like little beads of water appeared in them. Next to him, Mo Ran stroked his chin, and the corner of his mouth was still playfully curled upwards. Oh, that's not good. Little Phoenix is going to cry. Hearing these words, Shwemeng harshly turned his head and fiercely glared at Mo Ran. His watery eyes were red, but he kept any tears from rolling down. He had no more objections and argue no more. He stood up from the ground with a single movement. He lowered his head, grit his teeth and wiped the dust off his body. Then he knelt down facing the Yanlu Hall. Shizun, I know my mistake. Chu Wanning was still being punished by an iron rod. His straight posture never wavered, but his face was pale, and his forehead was coated with a fine layer of cold sweat. Shwemeng stubbornly said, but I'm not leaving. I'll accompany Shizun. He said while kneeling. Mo Ran rolled his eyes towards the sky. Shwemeng, courtesy name Shweziming, the proud son of heaven, was only ever humble in front of Chu Wanning. In front of others, he was a phoenix, but in front of their Shizun, he became a quail. If he wasn't sure that Shwemeng didn't like men, Mo Ran would start to suspect that this man was probably in love with Chu Wanning, so much so that he would throw himself in front of death itself for him. If Shizun slapped his left cheek, then this little bitchy quail would humbly slap his right cheek. A model filial disciple, like an obedient little puppy. Although he despised Chu Wanning in his heart, he couldn't understand why he was feeling somewhat upset. Mo Ran looked at Shwemeng. The more he looked at him, the more uncomfortable he got, and he felt that he could not let him show his loyalty alone. Chu Wanning already didn't like him. If Shwemeng made such a fuss, does that mean Chu Wanning wouldn't be as harsh with him in the future? So, he simply went over and knelt beside Shwemeng. I'll also accompany Shizun. Of course, she may also knelt down, and the three disciples all knelt and waited outside. When disciples under the other elders heard the circulating rumors, they all hurried to the court of discipline to watch the excitement. Oh my God, why is it Elder Yu Heng? I heard he went into a rage and beat a commoner. Ah! He's that cruel. Shhh, keep your voice down. If Elder Yu Heng hears you, he won't hesitate to whip you. Others, why is the young master kneeling? Young Master Mo is also kneeling. Mo Ran was handsome and he had a way with words. He didn't know how many female cultivators he'd earned goodwill with over the years, but right now, there were several people who couldn't help but feel pity for him and whisper, I feel so sorry for young Master Mo. What should I do? Should we intervene? We shouldn't concern ourselves with their master-disciple issues. Do it if you dare, I'm not that brave. Do you remember the senior sex sister who was whipped hundreds of times by Elder Yu Heng? The 200 strikes were completed. The barrier was finally removed. Shwemeng quickly got up from the ground. He ran into Yanluo Hall and approached. Seeing Chu Wanning's appearance, he cried out. He turned his head and grabbed Elder Zhoulu's collar. You're dead, old man. Couldn't you have hit him a little lighter? Shweziming. Chu Wanning, whose eyes were closed, his blood-stained lips moving and his hoarse voice carried a hidden warning. Shwemeng's knuckles creaked. He violently pushed Elder Zhoulu away, letting him go. This was when Mo Ran came in. He was still smiling, thinking that Elder Jolo must have taken into account Chu Wanning's status and wouldn't deal heavy blows. But looking down at Chu Wanning's injury, the smile on his face suddenly fell. Didn't Chu Wanning tell Elder Jolo that he had a shoulder injury? The 200 strikes had all more or less slashed across the older wound on his shoulder. New wounds overlapped old wounds. Chu Wanning, are you insane? His pupils shrank sharply and a strong resentment surged into his heart. Mo Ran didn't know what he was resenting or what he was so annoyed about. He only knew that he felt a blazing fire in his gut, torching through all his organs. He was used to torturing Chu Wanning to death himself, crushing his self-esteem and tarnishing his purity. However, Mo Ran couldn't stand seeing injuries on Chu Wanning that were made by someone else. He could move on from his past memories because Mo Ran subconsciously felt that this person was his. This person, whether dead or alive, hated or loved, was owned by him. He originally didn't care about Chu Wanning being punished because he thought that, since Chu Wanning was an elder, the 200 strikes would hardly be considered a severe punishment. At the very least, they would avoid the fresh wound on his shoulder. But Chu Wanning didn't say anything. He didn't even mention it. Why was this lunatic so stubborn? Why did he put up with this? What point did he so stupidly and stubbornly need to prove? His mind was in turmoil. Mo Ran raised his hand to help him, but Xuemeng was already one step ahead of him. He took Chu Wanning in his arms and helped him up. Mo Ran's hand hung in the air, and after a while, he slowly lowered it again. He watched Xuemeng help Chu Wanning walk away, not knowing the feeling that was stirring in his heart. He wanted to catch up with them, but he couldn't move. What happened in his past life was all in the past. Now, Chu Wanning was just his Shizun. Any chaotic, hateful, or intimate entanglement hadn't happened between them yet. He shouldn't have such thoughts. Whether Chu Wanning was beaten by someone, supported by someone, loved by someone, or was even killed by someone, it had nothing to do with him. Shimei came to him, "Come on, let's join the young master and take a look." "I'm not going. It's enough having Xuemeng there. I wouldn't help much. Any more people would just create chaos." Mo Ran's face remained unchanged, but his heart was a bit confused. He really didn't understand what he was feeling right now. What was this feeling called? Was it hatred? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 29. This venerable one doesn't want you to die. That night, lying on a couch in Shizun, Mo Ran rested with his hands behind his head. He stared at the ceiling beam, unable to fall asleep. Memories from his past came in front of his eyes. In the end, while some of the memories were disjointed and fragmented, they all focused on Chu Wanning's handsome and somewhat cold face. In fact, when it came to Chu Wanning, Mo Ran never knew exactly what he was thinking. The first time he saw him was under the blossoming tree in front of the sky-reaching pagoda. He had on white robes with wide sleeves. Out of 20 elders, he was the only one that wasn't wearing Shizun's trademark silver-blue armor. On that day, he had his head lowered, thinking intensely about the mechanical item he was wearing. The side of his face looked focused and gentle, like a white cat basking in the warm golden sun. Mo Ran watched him from afar, unable to take his eyes off him. He thought that his first impression of Chu Wanning was pretty good. But he couldn't bear the repeated punishments and cruel reprimands that followed. The white cat's fangs and claws wounded him. He was rescued from a sea of fire by his uncle. At that time, he was dying, his life hanging by a thread. He originally thought that once he got to Shizun, he would find a master who would treat him kindly and cared for him sincerely. However, despite all his pleasantries, all his efforts, Chu Wanning seemed to completely ignore them. On the contrary, he was severely whipped. When he was even slightly wrong, he was beaten bloody. Later, he would understand that Chu Wanning looked down at him with every fiber of his being. Poor character, questionable abilities. That's what the man in Snow Like White under the blossoming tree thought of him. He had once regarded Chu Wanning as the ninth heaven's cold moon, sincerely revering and respecting him. But in the ninth heaven's cold moon's heart, what was Mo Ran? A disciple he was forced to take. A despicable piece of trash. A hooligan who grew up in a music hall and was tainted with dirty air. Although Mo Ran always wore a jovial and indifferent look, he really started to hate Chu Wanning. That hate was tinged with a strong feeling of resentment. He despised him. Once upon a time, he had held a growing determination to impress Chu Wanning, trying to get his attention, his appreciation, to prove himself to him. During that time, if she may had praised him with a very good, he would be as happy as if he ascended to heaven. However, if Chu Wanning had praised him with a not bad, he would willingly to lay down his life. But Chu Wanning never praised him. No matter how much he worked, how hard he tried, how good he was, that cold man would always just nod his head indifferently then turn his face away. Mo Ran felt like he was going crazy. God knows how much he wanted to pinch Chu Wanning's cheeks back then. How he wanted to turn him around, force him to stare into his eyes and swallow his words of poor character, questionable abilities right back into his gut. However, he could only meticulously kneel in front of Chu Wanning, like a furry mourning dog, bowed his head and respectfully saying, "This disciple heeds his Shizun's teachings." In front of Chu Wanning, Mo Wei was humble to the bone. Even though he was a young master, he is still nothing in comparison. He finally understood that people like Chu Wanning simply looks down on the likes of him. Then, later on, he experienced a lot of things. Mo Ran took control of Shizun, then aspired to be the head of the higher cultivation realm, becoming an unprecedented overlord. Under his dark reign, everyone trembled, everyone was afraid, even those who remembered his dirty origins, his past stains, would say his name in a hushed tone. Since then, there was no more Mo Wei, only Ta Xianjun. The immortal emperor. People hated him. They hated him to the extreme. The heinous Mo Ran, 10,000 chances at reincarnation still couldn't save his soul. Taxian Jun Mo. Taxian Jun Mo. Taxian Jun Mo. Ta. Xian. Jun. But no matter how much people despised him, what could they do? Shizun rumbled with the sound of people chanting his name in unison. Thousands of people knelt down in front of the Wushan Hall, and the densely packed bodies kowtowing before him. Ta Xianjun will live forever and never falter. He felt so flattered. Until he noticed Chu Wanning's face in the crowd. At this point, Chu Wanning had already destroyed his cultivation base and was locked under Loyalty Hall as a prisoner. Mo Ran was determined to kill him, but he didn't want Chu Wanning to die quickly. He restrained Chu Wanning's limbs and cut through the blood vessels in Chu Wanning's neck. The wound wasn't large. A spell was cast to keep the wound from clotting. Little by little, blood dripped out. Little by little, his life drained away. The sun was scorching. The coronation ceremony had been going on for half a day. Chu Wanning's blood should also have finished draining. When he died, Mo Ran would finally be severed from his past, so he deliberately arranged for Chu Wanning to be bled and executed at his coronation ceremony. When he became the supreme overlord of the cultivation world, Chu Wanning became a lifeless corpse. Everything that happened before had disappeared. It was really great. But if this person was going to die, why was he still so conflicted? That handsome, somewhat thin-skinned face was pale, but his expression was soft, looking at Ta Xianjun neither subserviently nor fearfully. Only with disgust, contempt, and there was also a hint of pity. Mo Ran felt that he must be going crazy. Either that or Chu Wanning was crazy. Chu Wanning, a dying man, a defeated man, pitied him. He actually felt pity for an overlord who reached the top and was calling the shots. He dared to. The anger that had been accumulating inside of Mo Ran for the past 10 years made its appearance. He was in Loyalty Hall. Of course, at that time, he had renamed it Wushan Hall. He stood up suddenly in front of thousands of worshipping faces. Amidst the flattery and praising voices of the people, his black robe rolled as he walked down the steps. In front of everyone, he pinched Chu Wanning's chin, his face twisted, smiling sweetly yet hideously. Shizun, today is a great day for your disciple. Why are you still unhappy? Thousands of people went silent for a moment. Chu Wanning did not give in. His expression was cold. I don't have a disciple like you. Mo Ran let out a hearty laugh. He laughed freely, resembling a vulture hovering between the corridors of the Golden Palace. Shizun is so heartless, yet you think this venerable one is cold. He laughed and shouted, no disciple like me? Who taught me cultivation? Who taught me these techniques? Who taught me to be cruel and cold-hearted? Who was it, again? I still can't get rid of the whip scars on my body. Let me ask you, who made them? He narrowed his smile. His voice grew fierce, and his eyes reflected an icy gleam. Chu Wanning. Are you ashamed that you took a disciple like me? Am I bad to the bones, or the pickled dirt in my blood can't be washed away? Let me ask you, Chu Wanning, let me ask you, what do you mean by poor character, questionable abilities? He had finally gone mad, and his voice was distorted as he shouted. You never regarded me as your disciple. You never acknowledged me. But I used to. I really treated you as my Shizun. I truly respected you, admired you, and how did you treat me? Why did you never praise me, no matter what I did? Is there nothing that I can do right? Chu Wanning's body shivered, his face gradually paled. He opened his phoenix eyes ever so slightly. He looked at Mo Ran, his lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. On Shizun, where things were ever changing, the two people who remained the same faced each other. During that incredibly awkward silence, Mo Ran seemed to have finally calmed down. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he had that chilling smile, making the crowd shudder. He said gently and affectionately, Shizun, are you looking down on me? Do you think I'm weak? After a pause, his gaze schemed over the heads of the thousands of people, all of them kneeling, all crouching like dogs in front of his temple, all acknowledging him as the venerable master of the cultivation world, above the rolling dust clouds. Mo Ran smiled and said, now what? Before you die, I'll ask you one more time. In this world, who is the inferior and who is the superior? Who has trampled who underfoot and come out on top as emperor? And who is the one that's been defeated? Chu Wanning lowered his eyes, seemingly still taking in Mo Ran's proclamation just now. He didn't have the strength to move again. In the end, Mo Ran had to grab his chin and forcibly lift his face. But just as he forced him to look at him, Mo Ran suddenly froze. For the first time, he saw a look of regret on Chu Wanning's face. That look was so unfamiliar that Mo Ran felt like he had been burned and instinctively let go of his face. You. Chu Wanning's expression was very painful, as if he was enduring some kind of heart-wrenching, heart-piercing pain. His voice was very soft, almost hoarse. Floating in the wind, Mo Ran was the only one who heard what he said. He said, I'm sorry, Mo Ran. This is all Shizun's fault. At that moment, everything around him lost its sound. The sound of the wind, the sound of the grass and trees, the sound of the billowing robe, all fell silent. The face of Chu Wanning gazing up at him was the only bit of clarity. It was the only sight he could see. At that moment, he should have had many thoughts. Happy ones, proud ones, ecstatic ones. But no. His thoughts were strange, to say the least. There was only one thought, actually. He didn't know when, he had ascended so much higher than Chu Wanning. So much time has passed. Many things from the past had changed. Mo Ran's mouth fumbled and he murmured, what did you say? Chu Wanning smiled. That smile was unfamiliar to Mo Ran, who saw his distorted expression reflected in those phoenix eyes. Then, those eyes slowly closed, and Chu Wanning fell backwards. Mo Ran grabbed his shoulders as he fell. He howled frantically, like the sound of a beast breaking down. Chu Wanning! Chu Wanning, what did you say? Say it again. The person in his arms never responded again. His lips were as pale as pear blossoms. That face had always held an indifferent expression, but just before he died, his face was frozen into a somewhat bleak smile, the corners of his mouth turned slightly upwards. Searching through his memories, Mo Ran saw that face for the first time standing in front of sky-reaching pagoda. A faint smile, somewhat gentle. Chu Wanning. That tenderness shattered, and Haetang flowers fell to the ground. He finally got what he wanted. He had snuffed out his Shizun's life and reached the top of the world. But what is this? What is this? What was this building bitterness and hatred in his chest? Mo Ran condensed a faint black mist in his palm. His fingertips flew and quickly covered several of Chu Wanning's blood vessels, sealing his last pulse. You're going to die just like that. Mo Ran's eyes bulged and his face was grim. We're not done here, Chu Wanning. We haven't settled things yet. This isn't over yet. It's not over. If you don't clear this up, I'll crush Shuemeng, I will destroy Kunlun Taxia Palace, and obliterate the last few people you wanted to protect. I'll tear them all to pieces. Think about that. The ceremony didn't continue. He didn't care about the thousands of people kneeling in front of him. He changed his mind. He didn't want Chu Wanning to die. He hated him, but he wanted Chu Wanning to live, he wanted him alive. He picked up the man who had lost too much blood, flicked up, and jumped onto the roof with high eaves. His robe fluttered and stretched like the wings of a lone eagle, and his figure quickly flew over the eaves and headed straight for the south peak, straight to the Red Lotus Pavilion, the place where Chu Wanning once lived. There was abundant spiritual energy and many immortal herbs there, and he wanted to save Chu Wanning. Only when someone was alive could they be hated. If that person was dead, there was nothing left to hate. Did he think about killing Chu Wanning with his own hands before he went crazy? If Chu Wanning died, then what was left for him in this world? He was lying on his bed, sifting through memories alone. It was midnight, but he couldn't sleep. Mo Ran simply got up, washed his face, and put on his clothes. He grabbed a lantern, and walked towards Yanluo Hall. Chu Wanning must have just haphazardly replaced his bandages and went to kneel there. Mo Ran knew that was a loathsome and stubborn person who is very set in his ways. He never considered whether his body could endure it. Even if Shuemeng wanted to stop him, he couldn't. Sure enough, when he arrived outside Yanluo Hall, he saw a lone green lamp burning, wax dripping down the sides of the candle. Chu Wanning was kneeling with his back to the hall door, his posture upright, as handsome as a towering pine tree. When he saw his back, Mo Ran kind of regretted coming. It was the middle of the night, why was he here? To look for Chu Wanning? Was he insane? But coming all the way here just to turn around and leave felt pretty stupid. He thought for a while and came to a compromise. He put the lantern down lightly on his feet. He didn't intend to leave or go in, just stand outside the window with his elbows on the windowsill, resting his cheeks in his hands, watching Chu Wanning from afar. The copper bells on the eaves sway gently, the fragrance of flowers and plants filling the night. The two stayed there, one standing, one kneeling, separated by the vermilion lattice window and the quiet empty hall. If this happened before he had been reborn, Mo Ran would have been in a position to crash into the hall and order Chu Wanning to stop thinking and go to sleep. If Chu Wanning hadn't been willing, he would have also had the ability to seal Chu Wanning's hands and feet together and roughly carry him away. But now, he had neither position nor ability. He wasn't even as tall as Chu Wanning yet. Mo Ran was feeling complicated. He looked at the person inside through the window, but the person inside didn't know he was there. He couldn't see Chu Wanning's features, and Chu Wanning couldn't see his face. Thus, the white cat knelt all night without turning his head. Thus, the foolish dog also stood all night, never straying too far. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 30. This venerable one does not want to eat tofu. Hey, did you hear? Elder Yuhang violated the sect rules. As punishment, he has to kneel in Yanluo Hall for 3 days. In the morning class the next day, the disciples gathered on the platform of righteousness and evil to practice and meditate. In the end, they are all youngsters in their teens and 20s and they couldn't just do as they were told. If a master wasn't paying attention, they'll start whispering and gossiping. The news that Chu Wanning had been punished quickly spread. The disciples who witnessed the beating yesterday were not shy about sharing the gossip with others. Wow, why are you people finding this out about so late? Oh. So yesterday Elder Lucan took you up the mountain to collect night dew flowers? Well then, you guys really missed out on a lot. Yesterday evening, in the Qingtian temple, there was flesh and blood flying everywhere. It was horrible. Elder Yuhang was beaten with more than 200 strikes. More than 200 strikes. Not a single one missed. There was no mercy. The disciple made a particularly exaggerated expression every time he said a new sentence. No need to mention the show he was putting on for all his junior brothers and sisters surrounding him. Do you actually count all 200 strikes? Even a big man could be killed, not to mention Elder Yuhang. He couldn't stand it and passed out. This made our young master mad. He rushed in and fought with Elder Zhou. He said not to lay another finger on Elder Yuhang. Ah, that scene. His facial features were wrinkled up like a steamed bun. He squeezed his eyebrows. Finally, he stretched out a finger, swaying from side to side, and summed it up in 3 words. Tisk, tisk, task. Immediately, a younger sister disciple paled. What? Elder Yuhang fainted. Young master and Elder Zhou got into a fight. It's no wonder I didn't see Elder Yuhang in this morning class, so pitiful. What crime did he commit? I heard that he beat a commoner in a fit of rage. Such gossips drifted into Xuemeng's ears from time to time. Shizun Peak's young master had completely inherited his Shizun's temper, so he was very irritable. It was unfortunate that more than one person was gossiping about this. There were groups all over the platform of righteousness and evil, all muttering Elder Yuhang was punished and so on. It made him feel so irritated, but there was nothing he could do. In one corner was Xuemeng, veins bulging on his forehead, and in the other was Mo Ran, unable to stop yawning. Xuemeng couldn't direct his anger anywhere else, so he viciously spat at Mo Ran. The plan of the day relies on the morning. You dog, you're so lazy in the morning. What has Shizun been teaching you? Huh? Mo Ran said with sleepy eyes followed by another big yawn. Xuemeng, that's enough. I can handle Shizun's lecturing. Who do you think you are? I'm your cousin. Behave yourself when you talk with your cousin. Don't be so rude. Xuemeng said fiercely, my cousin is a dog. Be whatever you want to be. Mo Ran laughed, you're so mean. If you don't look out for your sect brother, think about how disappointed Shizun will be once he finds out. You still have the audacity to mention Shizun. Let me ask you, when he went to the court of discipline yesterday, why didn't you stop him? Meng, he's Shizun. Yuhang of the evening sky, Baidu immortal. What did you want me to do? Xuemeng was furious. He drew his sword, his sharp eyebrows furrowed angrily. What the hell did you call me? Mo Ran's grin stretched from ear to ear. Be good, Meng Meng. Sit down. Xue Meng bellowed, Mo Weiyu, I'll kill you. Shi Mei was caught between the two, listening to their daily bickering. He couldn't help sighing. He silently held the edge of his forehead, trying to concentrate on reading his book. The sun and the moon are poured in the pot * when the spiritual core is first formed. The way of heaven cannot be interpreted, and life and death are involved in the process. Note, referring to the Daoist practice of leisurely inactiveness. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye and Chu Wanning's period of reflection came to an end. According to the rules, the next thing he had to face was a 3-month grounding period. During this period of time, he could not leave Shizun Peak and needed to go to Menpo Hall to do miscellaneous chores, clean the corridor pillars of Nahi Bridge, sweep the steps in front of the mountain gate, and so on. Elder Jola was anxious. Elder Yuhang, to be honest, I don't think you should do these things. You are the best master of your generation. Doing this kind of dishwashing and floor cleaning, it feels wrong. He trailed off, leaving half the sentence unsaid. The main reason is that the old man doubts whether you can even sweep floors, cook, and wash clothes. Chu Wanning didn't doubt himself at all and went to report to Menpo Hall in an orderly manner. All of Menpo Hall, from the chief steward to the servant, was shocked to hear that Chu Wanning was coming to do hard labor. They were terrified, as if they were approaching the enemy. Chu Wanning, dressed in white, arrived in a flutter. His handsome face was cold and calm, completely expressionless. If you added an auspicious cloud under his feet and a whisk between his arms, he would have looked like the picture-perfect immortal. Manager Meng Patang felt very ashamed and uneasy. He was actually supposed to make such a beautiful man wash vegetables and cook. Chu Wanning himself didn't think he is a beautiful man. He stepped into the kitchen and coldly swept his gaze over the crowd, who couldn't help but take a step back. Chu Wanning was straightforward. What should I do? The chief steward secretly pinched the edge of his hem and thought about what he should say. He cautiously went with, how does this elder feel about washing vegetables? Chu Wanning said, all right. The chief steward was greatly relieved. He originally thought that Chu Wanning led a very pampered life. He might be reluctant to do this kind of labor, however, all the other jobs were either dirty and tiring or required some skill. He was worried that Chu Wanning wouldn't be able to do a good job. Since Chu Wanning easily agreed to wash the vegetables, he didn't need to worry about it. As it turns out, the chief steward was really naive. There was a clear stream in front of Menpo Hall. Chu Wanning went to the stream with a basket of green vegetables. He rolled up his sleeves and began to wash the vegetables. This area is under the jurisdiction of Elder Suanji. Occasionally a disciple of the Elder Suanji would pass by. One saw Chu Wanning actually washing vegetables and was so scared that he couldn't even get a word out. He rubbed his eyes 3 or 4 times to make sure he wasn't seeing things. He said in astonishment, Elder Yu Yuhang, good morning. Chu Wanning raised his eyes, good morning. Elder Suanji's disciples shivered and fled. Chu Wanning didn't bother to talk with them and continued with his task. He broke the leaves, washed them, and threw them back into the basket. He washed them very carefully. He broke each vegetable leaf apart, repeatedly brushing them thoroughly. The consequence of that was, come noontime, the basket of vegetables hadn't been washed. The man waiting in the dining room was anxious, pacing around in circles. What should we do? Why hasn't the Elder Yuhang come back yet? If he doesn't come back with the vegetables, how are we going to make the stir-fried beef and vegetables? The chief steward looked at the sun and said, forget it. Hurry, let's replace it with braised beef. So, when Chu Wanning returned, Menpo Hall had already served the beef. The stew was so crispy and flavorful that there was no need for vegetables at all. Chu Wanning frowned. He held his vegetables, rather unhappily, and coldly asked, if you didn't want the vegetables, Why did you make me wash them? The chief steward's hairs stood on end. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with his handkerchief and said something that he regretted. That's not it. I was thinking you could make a pot of stewed tofu with vegetables. Chu Wanning had no expression. Still holding his vegetables, he tilted his head and pondered silently. The chief steward hurriedly said, if you don't want to, that's all right. He hadn't even finished speaking before Chu Wanning asked, where is the tofu? Chief steward. Elder Yu Heng, do you know how to cook? Chu Wanning said, I'm not completely ignorant. I'll give it a try. At noon that day, all the disciples happily entered Menpo Hall as usual in groups, looking for somewhere to sit. Then, they headed to the counter to get their food served. There was no shortage of food on Shizun Peak. The food had always been plentiful and today was no exception. The braised beef was fatty and lean, the fish shreds were vibrant and rich, the farmhouse pork was golden and crispy, and the chopped pepper fish was red and tempting. The disciples rushed to grab their favorite foods, lining up around the hall, asking the chef to add a spoonful of sweet and sour pork ribs to them, pour some marinade on the rice, or add some spicy sauce. The ones who always made it to the front of the line first were Elder Lucan's disciples. The little guy at the head of the line had a big pimple on his nose. All he had on his mind was some mapo tofu. He skillfully carried the wooden tray to the last counter without raising his eyes and said, Master, I'd like a bowl of tofu. The master with pale, slender fingers, handed him a plate full of tofu. However, it wasn't the mapo tofu he was familiar with. Instead, it was a plate of strange food with a charred black color and indistinguishable ingredients. The disciple was surprised. What is that? Tofu boiled with bok choy. Menpo Hall was full of people, so the disciple didn't pay attention to answering the other person's voice. He said angrily, are you an alchemist? Can you even call this tofu with vegetables? I don't want it. Take it back. While cursing, he glared at the master there. As a result, when he saw the person standing behind the counter, the disciple screamed in fright and almost knocked the tray over. Elder Yu Heng. The disciple was on the verge of tears. No, that's not what I didn't mean that just now. Since you're not eating it, I'll take it back. Chu Wanning said blankly, don't waste it. The disciple stiffly picked up the plate, handed it to Chu Wanning, then left with his tail between his legs. In a short while, everyone knew that Elder Yu Heng was standing at the last counter, so the originally lively Menpo Hall was suddenly silent. The disciples lined up like a pack of puppies, and they hurriedly grabbed their food, panicked. They went up to the last counter respectfully, greeted the elder, and stumbled away. Hello, Elder Yu Heng. Good day, Elder Yu Heng. Good day. Elder Yu Heng has worked really hard. The disciples were very disciplined and were acting with an abundance of caution, so Chu Wanning accepted the tense greetings from each disciple, but no one dared try his pot of boiled tofu with green vegetables. Slowly, the line was getting shorter and the food in front of other kitchen masters was almost gone. Only Chu Wanning still had a pot full of food. The pot of vegetables was completely cold and untouched. Chu Wanning's face didn't waver, but his heart was conflicted. He had washed these vegetables all morning. At that point, his 3 disciples showed up. Xuemeng was still in silver blue light armor, a refreshing get-up. He bounced over with excitement. Shizun. How are you? Does your wound hurt? Chu Wanning was very calm. It doesn't hurt. Xuemeng, well, that's good. Chu Wanning glanced at him and suddenly asked, do you eat tofu? Xuemeng. End chapter.